Archaic Records.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Archaic Records here with you again. My name is Jamie, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. Here to wish you a very happy Morrissey Monday, my weekly celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths. And in 1998, there seems to be a lot of urban legend and folklore around Morrissey around that time. I know, truth be told, there's a lot of folklore and urban legend surrounding Morrissey, going all the way back to 1959, for those of us who are fans. But I think that this is a particularly sort of interesting time period in Morrissey's musical career. Of course, by the summer of 1998, we are a year removed from the Maladjusted record. That is a record that I love, and I loved back then. I bought it pretty much the first day it came out, and I really liked it back then, and I still do. But it is a record, I think, that is very divisive within the sort of Morrissey fan community. And it's for that reason, I think, that it is still one of the most interesting and kind of funnest records to talk about, just because of its place in the Morrissey catalog and the sort of wide array of opinions that Morrissey fans have of that album. Now, regardless of how you feel about that album, whether you love it, which I do, whether you dislike it, which I know some people do, you would have to concede that that album was probably a bit of a commercial disappointment at the time. If you look back around 1997, of course, it seemed as if the musical climate was beginning to change. And I don't know if this was necessarily sort of a low point for Morrissey and it is sort of mass popularity. I know for those of us who are diehard fans, there really is no peaks and valleys. But I think, generally speaking, if I were to look back, trying to look back, thinking about those times, 1997, 1998, I think that I would, if I'm remembering properly, I would say that was probably not the height of Morrissey's casual fan popularity. And I certainly don't think that the relatively lukewarm performance of Maladjusted did him any favors in that sense. But by the summer of 1998, Morrissey had been dropped by his label. He had fired his management company. And of course, according to myth, he was living in sort of self-imposed exile, far removed from society. Some people, I've heard some people say that he was contemplating retirement. He was contemplating life. I've heard other people say that he was regrouping and re-strategizing. And of course, in 2004, when his next original album would come out, You Are the Quarry, of course, he just blew all of our minds. So that time away from at least making original records may have been sort of painfully long. The payoff was definitely worth it. But in the fall of 1998, September 15th of 1998 to be exact, Morrissey did release his fourth solo compilation, My Early Burglary Years. This is an album that I actually really, really love. When I did my Morrissey ranking on the very first episode on this channel, I left this record off because I didn't want to get too mired down in compilations. Of course, I did include two compilations on that best of ranking, one of which was Swords, because to me, Swords has just always felt more like an album than a compilation. And of course, I included Bone and Drag, which, for the same reason as Swords, to me it feels more like a compilation or a record rather than a compilation. And to me, it is the greatest album of all time. So, of course, I had to include that one. But this record came out on September 15th, 1998, as I mentioned. And it is sort of in the spirit of Bone and Drag. Now, I would argue not quite as good, but it is in the same sort of model as Bone and Drag. It has a few album tracks. It has a few singles, B-sides, rarities, a couple of songs that at this point in time, when this record came out, weren't technically released in the United States. And if I had included this record on my Morrissey ranking list, this thing would actually rank really pretty high. I really love most of the songs off of this record. Man, I really love the artwork. This is actually probably one of my favorite Morrissey solo album covers, really in the entire catalog. I remember when this record first came out, of course I bought it pretty much right when it came out. I was really struck by the artwork. I really love the artwork. I mean, there's very few Morrissey records that you could really ever argue with the artwork on, but I really love this one. I find this to be very striking artwork. This record was released on Reprise Records. Prior to that, at least for the Maladjusted record, Morrissey had been on Island. Like I said, he had been dropped by Island after the Maladjusted record and had fired his management team. And when this record came out, now of course, whenever a new Morrissey record comes out, for me, you always want it to be a new record, of all original new material. But I was actually pretty excited when this record came out. Not that I didn't have most of this material already or all of it, but of course it's nice to have it on one sort of compilation, one collection. Like I said, if I were to put this album on my Morrissey ranking, I think that this one might actually make it into the top 10. I listen to this record still to this day. I listen to this record all the time. This one is never far out of reach for me. The album starts with the song Sunny, which is one of the songs which was technically previously unreleased in the United States before this record came out. Now I'm assuming, like me, most Morrissey fans, at least here in the United States, had this song probably on some sort of an import or some sort of... they'd heard it or had some copy of it. I absolutely love the song Sunny. I think it's a great way to kick off the record. Just an absolute killer. There's really not much on this record you can complain about. This thing is pretty solid all the way through. The second song is At Amber, which was a B-side, of course, for Piccadilly Polari. I've always just really been weirdly in love with the song At Amber. I don't really know why. It's kind of a weirder Morrissey song. From the first time I ever heard it till the next time I hear it, I've just always been really in love with that song. And I think it's a great addition to this compilation. The third song is the live version of Cosmic Dancer. And I have to say that this is where I might have a little bit of a gripe with this record. I've always found it kind of weird and off-putting and a little sort of distracting when you have live tracks mixed onto a studio album. Especially this one, after you start off with just two killer tracks with Sunny and At Amber. And then you throw in a live cover of Cosmic Dancer, of course, by T-Rex. I love that song. I like this version of this song is okay. I've seen him do the song live. I've always enjoyed his cover of this song. But just throwing this song onto this record in the number 3 spot to me just kind of feels slapped together. It feels kind of out of place. It's like, what should the third song be? I don't know, just toss this live cover on. I think it takes away from the record. There are actually two, of course, as probably most of you know, there are two live songs on this album. I don't know. I mean, is this version of Cosmic Dancer that unbelievable, that amazing that it has to be included on this record? It's okay. I think it takes away from the record. I think it kind of kills the vibe. as you're going along. It's a good song. I would just leave it off. It's a great B-side. It would be great. It's a great version if it were on a live record. But I don't like when you slap a live song onto a studio album. Just something about it. It's just a matter of personal preference. The fourth song is Nobody Loves Us. B-side for Dangin' 'Em Dave. And, oh, man, I love this song. This song to me, as I mentioned on my Morrissey ranking video at the very beginning of this channel, Southpaw Grammar is unfortunately probably my least favorite of the Morrissey studio albums, and it's just a matter of preference. Like I said, I said at the time, I always say when I talk about Southpaw Grammar, it's not that it's a terrible record, and it's unfortunate that any of these albums have to be ranked at the bottom. But how in the hell did this song not make the album Southpaw Grammar? If Nobody Loves Us makes that album, it is instantly the best song on the entire album. And that song alone jumps that album up a couple, at least in my ranking. I absolutely love the song Nobody Loves Us. It is one of probably, if you could say a deep track, it is easily in my top 10 deep Morrissey tracks of all time. Not suggesting that this would ever happen, but if I ever got an opportunity to meet, which I hope I probably shouldn't, if I ever get a chance to meet Morrissey or ever had an opportunity to interview him, that's one question I would have to ask is, how did Nobody Loves Us make Southpaw Grammar? Because that record has got a lot of stuff on it that is sort of questionable in my opinion, and that is the best song on the album. And like I said, it jumps that album up a couple of places in the ranking all by itself. I absolutely love the song Nobody Loves Us. I've always been confused as to how that song missed the record. Maybe you know. I don't. The fifth song is Swallow on My Neck, a B-side from the Sunny single. Absolutely love this song. Again, another song that you probably had on some sort of an import before this compilation came out, but technically was previously unreleased in the United States. I really love the song Swallow on My Neck. The next song to me is Sister, I'm a Poet, or it's not the next song to me, it's the next song on the record. But to me, it is a very high point on this record. This is a B-side to Last of the International Famous Playboys. I really love the song Sister, I'm a Poet. I always have. I love the lyrics. I sort of love the tempo of that song. It's always been one of my, again, if you're counting these, some of these as sort of, deeper cuts in the Morrissey catalog. I would say that it's always been one of my favorite sort of deeper cuts, if you will. The next song is Black Eyed Susan, which is also a B-side from the Sunny single. I really like this song. I don't know that this is necessarily the highest point on my Early Burglary Years, but I do really like it a lot. Again, even the songs on this record that aren't necessarily like the highest peak of the mountain are really good songs. I love the song Black Eyed Susan. This collection of songs to me is just so good that some of these songs don't stand out quite as much as other ones. The next song is Michael's Bones, a B-side from Last of the International Famous Playboys. Now, to me, this is probably the weakest song on the record. That's not to say that I don't like it. I do like it. I don't necessarily love it. This is the weakest of the studio tracks, I should say. I think the live version of Cosmic Dancer is probably the low point on this record for me. I already mentioned why. But I really do sort of like the song Michael's Bones. It isn't something that's super overly noteworthy. It's not life-changing. There's just a lot of really great stuff off this record. So to me, it's the low point. I don't think it's a bad song. I don't think that it's it's not necessarily a skipper, although occasionally. Number 19 is, number 9, excuse me, is I'd Love To, a B-side off of The More You Ignore Me. I really like this song a lot. Great lyrics, sort of dark. I really love this song a lot. This was a song that I, wasn't super overly familiar with. I remember when this record came out. I think I actually ended up getting the More You Ignore Me single after this came out, so this might have actually been the first time I had heard I'd Love To. It's a really great song. I love the lyrics to that song. The next song is Reader Meet Author. That is a album track, of course, off of Southpaw Grammar, as I mentioned before. Probably my least favorite Morrissey studio album. I do really like the song Reader Meet Author. There are a few songs off of Southpaw Grammar that I really love. Like I've said in the past, I'll say it again. He's never put out an album that's like all clunkage. And even Southpaw Grammar, which is my least favorite, it has a lot, it has a few really good songs. And I really do like the song Reader Meet Author. Passionate Love is next as the B-side from You Were the One for Me, Fatty. And I really like that song. Actually, I really like that song a lot more than You Were the One for Me, Fatty. I think Passionate Love is a much better song than Fatty. I think I've told you that to me, You Were the One for Me, Fatty it's kind of the solo equivalent to Girlfriend in a Coma. It's not a song that I really dislike, but to me it's just sort of a silly track that I oftentimes will skip when it comes on. But I really do love the song Passionate Love. Like I said, I think that's better than the A-side off that single. The next song is Girl Least Likely To. That is a B-side from November Spawned Monster, and man, I love the song Girl Least Likely To. I mean, that is goods. That is definitely one of the highest points off this record for me. Maybe not quite the highest point, but it is one of the songs that I absolutely love the most off this record. That is a song I just never get tired of. Every time it comes on, I feel like every time I hear the song Girl Least Likely To, I almost fall like more and more in love with it. It is just such an awesome song. Of course, I love November Spawned a Monster also. The next song is the live version, or a live version of Jack the Ripper. I will say the same thing I said about Cosmic Dancer. To this, I don't feel that this album, this track is really needed on this album. You take the two live songs off of this record. For one thing, you've still got 14 songs, not counting the live record, or the live tracks. And I think the song of the record is actually better without the live tracks. Now, this version of Jack the Ripper is awesome. It's much better to me than the version of Cosmic Dancer on here. But again, to me, when you throw live tracks on a studio album, it feels slapped together. It feels like, just put that there. I don't really care. That's kind of what it feels like. But I do really love this version of Jack the Ripper. Again, on a live album or as a B-side, I absolutely love it. I don't love it in the context of this album. The next song is I've Changed My Plea to Guilty. B-side for the track My Love Life. I love the song I've Changed My Plea to Guilty. I think this is a song that a lot of Morrissey fans can kind of connect to, sort of relate to the lyrics. I've always loved that song. Number 15 is Boy Racer, a album track from Southpaw Grammar. Probably my favorite album track off of Southpaw Grammar. As I mentioned before, I don't like this song quite as much as Nobody Loves Us, which was left off of the album. I don't quite understand why. But of the songs that are on Southpaw Grammar, Boy Racer is my favorite. I love that song. I love the video for that song. But my favorite track off of my Early Burglary Years is the last track, number 16, Boxers. To me, this is pretty close, if not in my all-time favorite top 10 Morrissey songs. I absolutely love the song Boxers. I remember the first time I heard that song. It's just one of those occasions, you probably still have these as a Morrissey fan. But by the time Boxers came out, I was already a pretty well-established fan. I felt like I knew what he was capable of. But I remember the first time I heard the song Boxers, it absolutely blew me away. Really, every time I hear that song, it just blows me away. I absolutely, like I said, that's probably, if it's not in my top 10 Morrissey songs of all time, it is close. To me, it is the best song off of what is really a very, very, very excellent compilation record. Like I said, this is sort of in the spirit of Bone a Drag. Now, it's not quite as good as Bone a Drag, but I think in the context of 1998, I think especially coming out of the sort of maladjusted era, regardless of how you felt about this record, I felt like this was a really great release during its time. Of course, when this record came out, we're still pretty much 6 years away from You Are the Quarry. None of us knew that at the time. Like I said, there was rumors going around the 1998, 1999 that Morrissey had retired, or he was contemplating retirement, contemplating life, maybe contemplating not living. There was just a lot of weird, kind of interesting speculation and sort of mythology around Morrissey around 1998, 1999. But I really love this record. Somebody mentioned it in the comment section of this channel this week. And I was like, man, I really need to go back and listen to it. Just start to finish. Like I said, it comes on sometimes on shuffle on my kind of Morrissey playlist. But I listened to this thing a couple times this week, start to finish, and man, I really think that this is something that is a high point in Morrissey's catalog. Like I said, of course, I could live sort of without the two live tracks, but they aren't criminal. They're both good. I just it feels kind of just like slapped together. One more thing as far as Morrissey related to get into before I get out of here this week, and I have to admit I'm looking this up because I want to get it right. I try usually not to read stuff off my phone on this channel, but according to the NME, which I do like to keep up on, The Smiths Are Dead is a new Commodore 64 game, and I never thought I would hear those words again in my life. Now, admittedly, I'm not a video gamer, but I am old enough to remember the Commodore 64. Never in my life did I think I would hear the term a new Commodore 64 game ever again. Apparently it's a thing. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a video game guy, so this could be sort of the equivalent to video game hipsters. Is that like what they're doing now? Like the kind of old-timey hipsters? Is this what gamers have come to? Are they reinventing the Commodore 64? I think it'd be pretty cool if they brought back the Atari 2600. That's what I grew up on. Now that I say that, they probably have. Like I said, I'm not a gamer. But anyway, The Smiths Are Dead is a new Commodore 64 game about Morrissey. Morrissey must track down the sheet music for the song Suede Head. The Smiths Are Dead is a new text adventure title for the Commodore 64, which puts players in Morrissey's shoes as he attempts to record his first solo single. In the game, the sheet music to Suede Head has been lost, so Morrissey must try to track it down through clues offered by Jeff Travis, Stephen Street, and Vinnie Riley. With the Smiths, the bar has been set high. Now the focus is on my solo career. I'll have to work hard to live up and not disappoint anyone. Of course, that's an old quote from Morrissey. But anyway, a new Commodore 64 Morrissey-based adventure game on the Commodore 64. Like I said, I grew up in the early 80s. I never thought I would hear the term new Commodore 64 game ever again, but something to keep an eye on. And if there is some sort of a physical product, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how any of this stuff works. I'm not at all into the video gaming sort of community. If there's a physical product, I know I will buy it simply just to have as a collection piece. Apart from that, the only other news this week is that Morrissey is expected to relaunch the 40th anniversary tour in about 5 days on October 7th in Orlando, Florida, before making his way up here to Tennessee, October 14th and 15th in Memphis and Nashville. And I don't have to tell you how excited I am. Anyway, man, thank you so much for checking out this video. This is Archaic Records in Nashville, Tennessee. My name is Jamie. If you liked this video, be sure to check back every week for Morrissey Monday, my weekly celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths. Be sure to go back and check out, revisit my Early Burglary Years, Morrissey's fourth solo compilation from 1998. Be sure to go out and support your local record store. And keep your eyes peeled right here on Archaic Records for more record content throughout the week. And until next time, my friends, I will talk to you then.